It's a journey out to the land of discovery. Just surrender body the spirit directly. We can get there. Awakening one morning. A fresh new start, second chance for glory. Awareness of the sun. A new day has just begun. 'Cause it's a journey out to the land of discovery. Just surrendered, embody the spirit directly. We will get there. What you gonna do today? Follow the path of truth, I'd say, but bring it on down. Silence helps to hear his sounds. 'Cause it's a journey to the land of discovery. Just surrender, embody the spirit directly. We will get there. Oh, 'cause it's a journey out to the land of discovery. Well, so just surrender, embody the spirit directly. We will get there. discovery. Where just surrender the body and the spirit directly. We will get there. We can get there. We will get there. We can get there. Jubilant with discovery.
Good morning, and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Denver. We are a loving, prospering community in the heart of Capitol Hill and online, bringing you a powerful and inspiring message every Sunday. And we want to stay in touch with you. Please join our virtual Zoom fellowship immediately following today's service. Email info@csldenver.org for an access link. CSL Denver, a place, a space, and a face of love. And remember, our practitioners are here to pray with you. Reach out for a prayer session with one of our professional practitioners. Learn more at the website csldenver.org. And hey, save the date, Sunday, May 23rd. Our own practitioner, Alice Nutter, will be presiding over her workshop, Moving from Drama to Empowerment. Sunday, May 23rd at 11 a.m. This is a fabulous way to learn more about Cartman's drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic. Plan now to join us Sunday, May 23rd at 11 a.m., Moving from Drama to Empowerment with Alice Nutter. All right, that's all the announcements we have for this morning. Let's get back into the music with more by Freddy Rodriguez Jr.
Prepare the way, prepare the way. Each day we pray, prepares the way. Each day have faith and meditate. When we're at peace, opens the way. Pray from your heart with all your soul, and peace will come for all the world. Prepare the way, prepare the way. Each day we pray, prepares the way. Each day have faith and meditate. When we're at peace, opens the way. Pray from your heart with all your soul, and peace will come for all the world. Prepare the way, prepare the way. Each day we pray, prepares the way. Each day have faith and meditate. When we're at peace, it opens up the way. Pray from your heart with all your soul, and peace will come for all the world. Prepare the way, prepare the way. Each day we pray, prepares the way. Pray from your heart, prepare the way. With all your soul and all your heart.
Thank you, Freddy. Beautiful. Prepare the way. So now let's move into our invocation. I invite you to sit back and just relax into your chair if you so choose, and just take in a deep breath. And just let go and release all that it took to get here this morning. And we are preparing the way, knowing that Spirit is here, living, moving, living, breathing each one of us into this gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful spring day, at least here in Denver, Colorado. And so from that place, just knowing that Spirit is with us, and it is with CSL Denver and all who with we are blessed with Reverend Mark Gilbert's talk this morning, with Freddy's music, with the reading that I have prepared, and just knowing that it is always about serving the greater good for Center for Spiritual Living Denver, and knowing that those who choose to watch this, whether in person or later this week, that they take something with them from this time together, and knowing that we are a community. We are so truly blessed and just so full of love. And so from that place of deep, deep gratitude, I am so grateful for each beloved person who chose to show up this morning. I am so grateful for the Center for Spiritual Living Denver, and knowing the truth of who it is and who we are. And from that place of gratitude, I release this into that one mind, that one heart, knowing that all is well, and it is so, and so it is. So this morning, if you ask your friends what their favorite scene is from any Indiana Jones movie, some may mention the scene from The Last Crusade, where, according to the map he's following, Indy has to cross an invisible bridge to get to the Holy Grail. With his father close to death and the Grail the only hope to save him, Indy rushes through a doorway below a carved lion's head and finds himself standing right on the edge of an enormous canyon. On the opposite wall is a doorway, but in between is a deep chasm. He repeats the clues from his father's diary. In his diary, Henry Jones Sr. mentioned a series of 3 challenges that were designed to prevent most seekers of the Holy Grail from finding the room in which it was stored. The third of the 3 challenges was called the Path of God. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. In the last of the challenges, the person must take a leap of faith from a sculpture of a lion's head across the huge canyon. The object was for the person to believe that they can cross whether or not they can see the path. The only way for the bridge to appear is to step out into what appears to be the void. It takes a literal leap of faith that support will be there for the next step to appear. With no other options and time running out, he does the only thing he can do. He steps out into the chasm. And his foot hits solid ground. The camera pans down and reveals a bridge across the canyon, perfectly camouflaged to look like the opposite wall of the canyon. Truth is about choosing to act even if we're not certain of the outcome. Walking in trust leads to a sight of the truth. The only thing that made it possible for him to really believe was for him to take that first step. And then it wasn't a matter of forced belief. He knew the bridge was there because he was standing on it. And now from our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, from his book, This Thing Called You. There is that within me which knows I am not only one with this power is actually flowing through me now. I am not only unified with the divine presence around me, this presence is my presence. It is the presence of my real and true self. I am forever one with life. And so it is. And now back to Freddy with a new song called Steppin' Up.
Stepping out, stepping up, willing to let go to the life that you plan, have the life and change your way of thinking. It'll change your life. Hear the words of God speaking. Stepping out. Stepping up. Stepping out. Stepping up. Enlightenment for a wave in ocean is the moment the wave realize it's water. It's time for you to step. If not you, who step up to enjoy the view. Stepping out. Stepping up. Stepping out. Stepping up. Stepping out. Stepping up. Yeah. Stepping out. Ooh, stepping up. Stepping out. Stepping up. Yeah, stepping out. Stepping up. Stepping up.
Oh, thank you, Freddie. That was wonderful. I like that song and how perfectly it fits for today. And welcome, everybody. Thanks. It's good to be back here at the CSL Denver. I always enjoy speaking with you and look forward to meeting with everybody in person soon. But today, I just want to welcome everybody who's live for the broadcast, as well as anyone who's watching this later on the recording. Just know that you're blessed, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. You know, CSL Denver is continuing today with its monthly theme of stepping into the unknown. And today's title talk is entitled Stepping Out, Stepping Up. So what is this message really about today? Here's how it was advertised to you. We gratefully step out of what has been and confidently step up into our greatness, excited to blaze a new trail of spiritual awareness. What have we learned thus far on our life's journey, and what gifts are we bringing to the new leg of our journey? What will we share with those who travel with us? I love that. And there was a beautiful quote that was also shared, one from Joseph Campbell, who wrote, "We must be willing to let go of the life we had planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us." And that was beautifully encapsulated by the reading that Alice did a few minutes ago, and from Indiana Jones, and stepping out into that void and just trusting Spirit that it's going to provide for you. And that's essentially what we're talking about today. I love the concept of this talk, and I want to thank whoever put it together. I know it's part of the Centers for Spiritual Living's process of providing some guided talks, and I know that I helped, when I was working at home office, I helped prepare some of these, and I know how the process works with those individuals and how much they get in tune with Spirit, and how I did too when preparing material. So what I like to do when these talks are being given, and Alice gave me the option to change the talk, and I said, no, I want to go with the one that's being presented, because I know that every time I do that, I learn something. I go within, and I am growing through the process of taking what was divinely guided by that individual and presented to me, that I simply listen to it, listen to my inner intuition, and decide what is the right way to approach this particular topic. And when I did that this past week, what I came up with was 3 key points that I wanted to cover with you this morning. The first one is pay attention to the wisdom. Pay attention to wisdom. The second one is develop what I call spiritual reliance. And the third is to be love in action. So that's where we're going for the next few minutes. We're going to be talking about paying attention to the wisdom around you, developing a spiritual reliance, and then be that actor who is acting in love. What do we mean by pay attention to wisdom, though? It means turning our attention to the patterns that life is presenting to us and tuning into the wisdom that's around us all the day. All the time we're getting guidance from spirit, but we often don't look at it because a lot of times we get mesmerized by this material world. You know, one of the things I always say when I talk to you is this general reminder that we are spiritual beings who are living a material existence, that we live and have our being in two realms at the same time. We've got one foot in the spiritual realm, which is our ultimate truth, and we have another foot in the material realm of the physical and the material, and identifying ourselves with our egos and our bodies. Yet, although we live in these two realms simultaneously, this material world is so mesmerizing to us. It is so exciting and interesting, and it grabs us like a shiny object, such that we spend most of our time looking at that. And that's why we encourage you so much to build your spiritual practices of meditation and other techniques, readings, and reminders of spirit, and sitting in the oneness to balance the mesmerizing nature of this physical life. But both sides of the coin are giving us wisdom. Both sides of the material world and its physical nature and the inner world is giving us guidance and wisdom if we're open to listening to it. One of the things we have to realize, though, is that there are limitations to it. There are sometimes these messages we received are tainted. And we realize that in the sense, if we look at the material world and our physical nature, most of us know that these physical bodies that we are walking around in, that they were organically grown and evolved to only accept so much information in, that our sensory input into our conscious awareness is limited. We know this if we studied it at all, that we only see a small band of the visible light spectrum, that we only hear a small amount of the sounds that are around us. And likewise, there are things going on around us all the time that our physical nature does not pick up on. So we have to remember that what we see and sense from the physical world is only a small representation of what is going on in the vast universe around us. But even with that, our evolution has caused us to limit how we interpret what we experience. You know, one of the easiest ways of thinking about this is scientists have shown that humans have developed a natural pattern to see faces everywhere they look. You know, if you see a random area of dots, or sometimes you can look at the carpet on your floor and all of a sudden a face pops out at you. That's because we have this natural inclination to see certain things in the patterns around us, even if they're not really there. So that can taint our awareness of the outer messages we're receiving. And similarly, we've been shown that through psychological studies, that even the information that we allow into our awareness is frequently guided and limited by our past perceptions. In other words, if we think and believe that something is true, that's what we tend to see, that we allow into our awareness that which we already believe. So what we have on the one hand on our physical nature are limitations, so that we can't totally believe everything we see and hear as a truth, as truth. Similarly, so if we go inside and we listen inside, can we believe everything that we think? Well, there's limitations there as well. Limitations in the sense that we have the preconceived ideas about what's being presented to us, and we will look for things that reinforce our ideas, reinforce our beliefs. So we continuously have a dialogue, inner dialogue that says, see, that's right. It reaffirms what we already believe. And what we also have the development of through our past experiences, certain beliefs, certain patterns that make us think that that is true. And so what we have to do is to recognize that there are limits to our inner consciousness, that there are these inner dialogues that present to us a dialogue that says certain things are true and certain things are not. But that dialogue, that inner dialogue, is frequently driven by our humanness, by our egos and our personalities, and the desire to be successful and accomplish certain things in the material world. So we have limitations on our inner thoughts. So I'm not here to give you sort of a you can't trust anything message, what I'm trying to get you to see and think about for a moment is that what we get and what is filtered in both our outer experiences and our inner awareness every day, that inner continuous dialogue that we all have, is a sense of something that can be tainted by by other factors. So how do we know what our spiritual truth is? How can we step into the unknown and know the true messages that Spirit are giving to us? Because what I'm calling you to do this day is to find and listen to the patterns that are around you all the time, the patterns of spiritual wisdom that are being presented to you that say, this is what's next for you. This is where you need to be stepping into the unknown in your individual lives. And how do you get to listening to those individual patterns and seeing them? How can you? You know, it's one of those things, I hearken it back to the fact that one of the techniques we teach in our Centers for Spiritual Living is a process called visioning. Visioning is a process whereby we can tune into the spiritual wisdom of the divine that's flowing around us, and we catch the vision and we capture it and write it down. And if you've ever done visioning, you know it's a simple step of being into a meditative state, tuning into the wisdom that's around you, then asking certain questions and then allowing certain things to pop into your awareness, be it words, sounds, phrases, pictures, whatever, and then you write them down. And if you've gone through the visioning process, one of the first things I think that everybody experiences is a sense of, how can I trust that that's not coming from my ego? If we're visioning for the next steps for Center for Spiritual Living Denver and what we want to do, and I already have an idea of what I want us to do, would I not try to filter that through in my ego to get it into what I think is Spirit giving me a message? So that discernment between what's ego and what's spiritual is a continuous test for us to consider looking at. And I know that whenever I've visioned, I just allow it to flow, and how I can basically come to discern it over time. That I come to recognize, oh, that's really sort of ego speaking, and that's something greater and grander coming from somewhere else. So the question becomes, how can we practically step away from our egos, the material world, and the limitations of our past beliefs, and step into the void and the unknown, and listen and hear and know what is the message for us to take into our awareness to guide us to the next step of what we're doing? And what I would suggest that you do is that you look for patterns. The very first thing is to look for patterns, life patterns and wisdom, to consider what has shown up in my physical world around me over and over and over. If I keep developing the same relationships that keep failing, if I keep going and having the same jobs that keep giving me dissatisfaction, if I keep having any kind of experience in my life that is continuously giving me the same message over and over time, I can see that Spirit is developing a pattern for me to look at. Similarly, we have inner thoughts that show up all the time, inner things that come into our awareness that say, here's something you need to consider, here's something you need to consider. And oftentimes we push them away and saying, that's not realistic, that's not logical, that's not something I want to do, I don't want to face that. But if we continue having these inner messages over and over, that develops through these patterns, either external situations that repeat themselves or internal thoughts that repeat themselves, we start seeing that there are developing patterns, and perhaps those patterns are breaking through the disruptive aspect of the messages that we get every day and trying to guide us to what's next for us. And I think that as we do that, we then practice. We practice through time, the continuous aspect of seeking to see the divinity's messages around us, that the more that we can practice that and call ourselves to see God's messages to us, the more we can start developing that muscle of discernment to see it. Now, a few years ago, I wrote a book called Be Yourself, Evolving the World Through Personal Empowerment. The book was really about developing your aspect of identifying your inner calling. What's your life purpose? And in that, I gave a lot of techniques for guiding you through steps of looking at your life's patterns, looking at inner guidance, and other practical tips that can guide you into looking at the messages that life is giving you. But a simple way to continue to do this is to look back over your life and any patterns that have developed, or to every day set an intention that I'm going to be open for God's messages. And if you can do those two things, and every day look for patterns and look for the messages that are showing up in your life, then you'll start to see that you are being given wisdom. And that's the key point here for the very first thing, is to identify the wisdom that life and Spirit is giving you. It's guiding you to the next step of stepping into the unknown, Where is it that you're being called to get out of your comfort zone and step into that void, step into that area where you think there is no bridge there to take you to the next step? So if you can do that, that is just the most beautiful and wonderful thing. You know, my wife has been doing this. So she was getting continuous messages for years over wanting to be in nature and to having some sort of van or camper or whatever. And over time, she keeps getting that message and getting that message and getting that message. And what it's allowed her to do is to hone in on it and hone in on it. And she started listening to it and then started bringing into her awareness the recognition that all around her, life was giving her messages regarding having some sort of camper van, so that she has zeroed in now through the process of continuously listening to that message to know that she's now set the intention for a particular type of camper van that she wants to bring into her awareness and is moving forward in that vision now. But it all started by looking at and identifying this pattern that kept re-emerging in her awareness. Somewhere in you is that. Somewhere in you is a repetitive message from your external life or repetitive messages that are showing up to you every day. I personally am also going through this. I know that many of you know that I retired from home office with Centers for Spiritual Living last year. I was taking care of my father who died. He died in November. And through all of that and through this COVID situation that we've been experiencing, I've also looked at the fact that what's next for me. And when I have done that, what it eventually started giving me repeated messages and telling me to do was to go back to my new thought basics. Go back to the thoughts of spiritual awareness and spiritual teachings that were the basis for my becoming a practitioner and a minister in the first place. And as I've done that, what I've done is getting into the readings of Yogananda, the readings of Thomas Troward, Ernest Holmes, and many other individuals. And that has reignited my life and helped me see the development and the path that's next for me as well. One of the things that came up and that I listened to this week was I've been in the middle of taking care of looking at some of the Ernest Holmes audio collections that I've had collected through the years. You know, he had a lot of talks and different things that he did when he was alive. And although we always give his readings, there are plenty of audio recordings of him. You may have heard some of them in the past. And so I was actually going through some this week. And then when I heard one of the clips, I said, I knew immediately that brought us to what our second point was today. So what I am doing is listening to the intuition and wisdom being presented to me to give you that our second point today is about spiritual reliance. Once you have listened to the wisdom that Spirit is providing you and you've taken it in, the next thing is to trust that and to build a reliance on it. And I thought maybe we should listen to Ernest and see what he has to say about building spiritual reliance.
We all believe that God is, and we all believe that we live because God lives in us. And we think because the mind of God thinks through us, we should think intelligently and act creatively, because the mind that created everything is creating something new in us right now. Here are the first steps then in acquiring spiritual self-reliance: to believe in God with our whole being, to believe in the reality of our spiritual selves as forever one with God, and to establish a continual communion with that God who is both within and round about us. And last but not least, we find that all the great souls have acted on their vision. Having received it, they no longer remain passive. They carried the vision into action in human affairs. They were like people who listened to some celestial music in the silence of their souls, then sing it over again that others may hear it. They were those who went into the secret place of the Most High within themselves and received the healing balm of life, and then took it into the marketplace that others could be made whole.
Ernest says it so beautifully there, and that's better than quoting him. But what is he saying here? He is saying we need to develop the spiritual reliance in our life. And what does he mean by that? He says there are steps to it. To believe in God or Spirit with our whole being. That is, turn away from the mesmerizing physical world and recognize the truth of who we are, which is we are these spiritual beings. Recognize that. Then to believe in the reality of our spiritual selves as forever connected and one with that divine God, and to establish a mechanism for continual communion with that God, recognizing that it's both within us and around us. And so that as we see the messages of the life that's being presented to us, or our inner awareness of thoughts that are coming forward into our consciousness, we can recognize that we are in a continuous state of communion with the divine. And Diego, could we play that clip just one more time? Diego, are you there? All right, we're apparently not. I think what we'll do is go ahead and move on. What I wanted to do, if we listen to it again, because I just love hearing Ernest's words, is that at the very end of the clip, he invites us to act upon our vision. That once we have listened to the wisdom of the universe, and once we've developed the spiritual reliance, knowing that we are one with God, and that we're continually communing with God with all that we're doing, he calls us into a state of action, a call to take that next step into our lives. This is the part where we're really stepping out and stepping up and trusting that the universe is going to have our backs and give us what is needed for us. So how do we act on that vision? That leads me to the third point this morning, and that is for us to be love in action. We need to recognize that no matter what each of our specific callings are, and to recognize, yeah, I may be called to go back to my new thought roots and grow those and develop it into something else. You may be guided for upping the level of customer service and the work where you're doing, or whatever it is in your life, to be the best mother that you can be, the best parent, the best grandparent. There's something that is calling you that is next for you. And it's different from each one of us because we're all the individual unique expressions of the one. Yet, even though they're different in their external expression, at the base of it, when we have anchored into the divine, we recognize that what we're being called to do is a call to love and to service to the greater good. Now, again, I've been practicing what I preach this week. I've been listening for the divine guidance that is coming forward to me to express what I needed to say in terms of today's message. And one of those things came to me in terms of a YouTube video that I was watching. And I thought, hey, let's show some clips from this. So this, you know how YouTube basically says, if you like this, you're going to like this. And they just have algorithms that the YouTube gobs use to present to you the next video, trying to keep you watching. And all of a sudden, one of the things that appeared in my feed this week was an interesting conversation between Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson. Now, Russell Brand, if you know him, he is an English comedian, actor, who now does a lot of YouTube and podcast videos that have an interesting spiritual bent to them. In fact, I think his beliefs are very much in alignment with Science of Mind. And then Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist who came on the scene a few years ago, making some interesting political and cultural observations that made him quite controversial, and often his labor is conservative. I've got to say, I don't always agree with everything that he does, but I can always say that whenever I listen to him, I glean something from it and I get some food for thought. So I thought, well, let's watch this video between Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson. And when I did, I recognized in the middle of it, intuition said, here is something that perhaps relates to what we're talking about today, about being in service. So what we're going to do is watch a short clip. We're going to break this into two clips because when it's viewed in the fair use God sometimes will come down on you if you don't edit and don't show short clips. But what I've also done is taken this hour-long video from a video that, if you're interested in it, you can go online and find it. It's under the name Russell Brand versus Jordan Peterson Part 3. Russell Brand versus Jordan Peterson Part 3. And it was posted this past April 17th, 2021. And in the video, in the middle of it, the middle third of this video, which is about an hour long, is the area where they're talking about our individual growth and evolution and our personal and spiritual evolution. And how do we know what we're doing is right? How do we know what we're doing is in service to humanity, and as Russell puts it, the Christ consciousness? And how do we aim higher? So let's watch the first clip.
come out the other side of that with a conclusion not being how do I achieve more as an individual, but how do I convey love? How do I convey Christ consciousness? How do I...
And I would say, well, I am definitely of the mind that it would be best for everyone to orient themselves. And I've tried to figure out what that orientation would mean. And some of it is, and I've used history as my guide as much as I've been able to, philosophy and religious ideas, all of that, trying to puzzle this out. It's like, well, the love part is, okay, you have to decide. You serve someone. That's an old idea. It's Christ or Satan. Fundamentally, that's an archetypal reality. And what that means in some sense is that you're either working for the betterment of things because you're in favor of being and its flourishing, and perhaps even its playful and beautiful flourishing. You've decided that despite the horrors of existence, that would drive you to resentment and bitterness and hatred and the desire to destroy. You've decided, no, I'm going to aim up. And that's love. It's like I'm going to aim up. And
I love the idea of living authentically and truthfully in a moment, and how sort of potent, radical, punk and effective, divine that could be, mischievous, tricksterish almost, and
right. Do you believe that love and truth prevails? Do you believe that? Oh, if you believe it, act it out. Well, then you act it out, and it's very unpredictable, and you do have to watch for the emergence of these counter positions that you described. You believe it, so you act it out, and you observe what happens, and you accept that as regardless of the consequences in some sense, by presuming to begin with that if it emerges as a consequence of the actions of love and truth, then it is by definition good, regardless of what you think at that moment.
Okay, I was hoping to have given you a little bit of input in between those two videos, but let me talk about them collectively. In the first clip that you saw, what you got was Russell Brand calling us to look at what's next for us when we're not tied to the physical material. Yes, we want to succeed in the physical life, but we're being called to something greater. And then Peterson talks about the fact that he connects with looking at various sources, much like Ernest Holmes did. And that's a point I wanted to make, is he's looking at not only history, but religion and philosophy to develop where is it that we're called? What is it that is the highest, greatest good for us? And in that, he describes that we all have to make a decision. We're either going to serve Christ or we're going to serve Satan, which is simply an archetype regarding the fact that we're either going to serve good or we're going to serve not good. We're going to grab for what is the best for being and allness and the love of the entire universe, or we're going to act in a manner that is less than that. That's the choice that we continuously are faced with when we are looking at acting. Once we've heard the divine messages and we've made a choice and we're trying to be our pure and perfect selves in the universe. It so much relates to a quote that I wanted to share from you from Ernest Holmes. I don't have it on audio, but I'm going to read it to you. And I've used this in many of my blogs because it's Holmes' guidance for how do we make a choice. And he says the criterion for any man as to what is right or wrong for him is not to be found in some other man's judgment. The criterion is, does the thing I wish to do express more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harm no one? If it does, it's right. If it's not, it's selfish. But if it's done at the expense of anyone, then in such degree, we're making a wrong use of the law. So this is the guidepost that we're looking at. Are we serving the great flourishing of being? Is it serving the greater good, or is it selfish? That's a choice each one of us is made with each day. And so what we're called to do then is to orient ourselves to that North Star. Now, in the second clip that we rolled into a moment ago, the point that I wanted you to get out of that one is that, first off, I love the fact that Russell is calling us to a sense of being our authentic selves. And that when we do that, we become in service to the divine. We become in service to some greater good and wanting to grow Christ consciousness on this planet. And in doing so, our actions become sort of this sense of being mischievous or the trickster, that we want to look at this life in a playful way. And when we allow Spirit to move through us in our actions, that we become this trickster for God. When I heard that clip, I couldn't help but think of Evan Hodkins. Many of you may know him, spiritual teachers over in Peonia, Colorado. And I've been to a number of his sessions through the years. And one of the things he always calls himself is he says he's doing mischief for God. And he calls us all to do God mischief in our day. And so I invite you to do that. Find a way that your calling and your inner goodness is expressing in a mischievous nature. And when you do that, you will just find a re-enchantment with the life around you. Now, in one of the pieces that I did not include in those two clips was one where Peterson talked about the fact that if you act with that true authenticity, that you will change your life. If you act from a sense of truth, of your truth, what you know to be true, and do that for a period of 10 years, your life will change in so much wonderful and glorious ways. But then he also says in the clip that you did see there briefly, is that when you do that, the world is going to give back to you sometimes messages that are making you question whether you're acting correctly. They're going to call you in, they're going to push back at you. And even when that happens, even when the naysayers come out of the woodwork to say that, hey, you following your passion isn't the right thing to do, you listening to your inner guidance isn't the right thing to do, you have to see that as evidence of the goodness of love. When you are devoted to truth and love, even the pushback is a message from God to stay focused. It's a calling for you to stay anchored in the awareness of the one. So I hope that was beneficial to you. But in summary today, what I want you to walk away from this session with is that every day we're presented with messages from the divine. If we are called to listen to them, if we can set the intention to listen, Spirit is guiding us into stepping into the unknown. When we have to set the intention and look for patterns and look for the inner messages and the messages that come around us every day to find what's next for us. When we do that, we then have to develop a sense of reliance on Spirit. We know that Spirit is going to have our backs and that we can step into the void, into the unknown, and know that it's going to work out perfectly. Knowing that we are in total communion with the divine and that we are called to act in love, service, action to the divine. And when we do that, we recognize that our actions are made with that choice. So we're either serving goodness or not serving goodness. And I call each and every one of us to be an agent of change for good, to see the way that you can show up in life in love, mischief, to be that trickster for God that is bouncing around and keeping the humor going and poking holes in areas where we've gone astray in our direction back to God and our recognition of our oneness of all. Take that with you this week and act upon it. I will too. Thank you. Let's go into prayer. I simply know and feel at the very essence of my being that there's only one God, one life, one power, one divine essence that moves in and through everyone. It moves through me. It moves through every person who are listening to these words, that through the message today that we are reminded of the truth of being, that we are these spiritual beings. And although the life of the physical form is mesmerizing, and can learn from it, we stay anchored in the recognition that we are divine and that we are part of a grand, glorious oneness. And when we do so, I know that every person here is listening for that aspect of their lives and beings where they're called to step out of what they have done before, any limitations of the past, and step up into the greater calling of their being. Where are you being called this day to serve the divine in love? What are the messages you're receiving? They're telling you what's next for you. How are you going to be that love servant in action? I know for every person listening to these words that they are coming into greater and greater clarity into how they can be a force for good, how they can show up as love on this planet, and through that assist us in creating heaven on earth. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, so much for this time together, for this message, for this information, for this chance to serve, for this chance to be that mischievous trickster for you as we move through this experience. And I release these words knowing that it's so, and so it is.
Thank you, Reverend Mark. Very powerful talk. I really appreciate it. And being a trickster for God, it's a good reminder. So now let's move into our offertory. We are so grateful and blessed for everyone's support of CSL Denver. whether it's in time, treasure, or talent, and especially during this time of change. Whether this is your first time joining us or you are a returning community participant, we want to thank you so much for your continuing financial support of the important work we are striving to provide. Right now, there are several ways you can make your financial contribution to Center for Spiritual Living Denver. This information is running along the bottom of the screen. It can be either by sending us a check or texting, text to give, or going on to our website, www.csl.org, and pressing the donate button there. Whatever you choose to give, however much, however, whatever, just know that we are so truly grateful and know that it will come back to you 1,000-fold. And if you haven't already done it and you shop at King Soopers and or Amazon Smile, you can link your account to Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Our center will then receive a percentage of all proceeds. And I think this past quarter, we got about $70 some odd. So thank you again for shopping at Amazon or King Soopers and for choosing CSL Denver as your place to donate to. So please repeat with me our affirmation and hold it in your hands and take it in, knowing that it is just so truly blessed. This perfect gift is spirit in form, circulating and blessing all that it touches. Freely I give, and joyously I receive. And so it is. And so for our announcements, for the end of our service, here at CSL Denver, we want you to know that we're here for you, to celebrate or hold space for you, however, whatever we can do for you. Please know that our practitioners are available for prayer work with you, and we would love to pray with you for celebrations or challenges. Our names and phone numbers are on our website at www.csldenver.org. Or if you have a prayer request, please email it to info@cslddenver.org. And as it mentioned at the beginning of our service, we are having our virtual fellowship on Zoom this morning. If you did not receive the Zoom invitation earlier this morning, please send an email to info@cslddenver.org and mention fellowship, and we'll send you a Zoom invitation right away. And please mark your calendars for Sunday, May 23rd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. As I will be facilitating a workshop on moving from drama to empowerment. We will discuss Cartman's drama triangle and the empowerment dynamic as taught by David Emerald, and discuss various ways to move out of the drama into empowerment in your life. The cost is a love offering. The workshop will be held via Zoom. And if you're interested in attending, please send an email to info@cslddenver.org to receive your Zoom invitation link closer to the time of the class. And look for future announcements about an in-person picnic coming up in June. And we're thinking June 5th. So please mark your calendars for that, and know that we can maybe see each other and maybe not necessarily give hugs, but who knows? So, but we're looking at getting that planned, and we'll get more information to you. And we're also talking about having another movie night and discussion. We're thinking about the Celestine Prophecy. We would love to hear your comments and suggestions. So email us at info@cslddenver.org, or go on our Facebook page and post some questions or comments or whatever you want to find out or get more information on. And a reminder that over at New Thought Media Network, they are offering a Science of Mind and Spirit lecture series on the Science of Mind textbook. So check them out on their YouTube page. Reverends Elzia and Robert are some of the lecturers for this series. And this happens on Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time in person, but they also have recordings of it on their website. And New Thought Media Network also has a lot of other programs by different practitioners and ministers. So check them out, because they've just got a lot of really deep, rich stuff. Reverend Robert is really doing his best to try to make a very global information available to everyone. So meanwhile, we hope you have a wonderful week, and affirm right here and right now that 2021 is blessed and perfect in all that it is. We love you and miss you. Please take care of yourselves. Thank you so much, Reverend Mark, for your talk today, and Freddy for your music, and Diego for your production. So we love you all, and see you next week. Let's close out with more music from Freddy Rodriguez Jr.
Through me, you're beside